Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Adam Dorsey, a psychologist in Silicon Valley and the host of Super Psyched, a podcast dedicated to supercharging your life. Each episode contains fun, high-quality interviews with experts looking at psychology from all angles. Super Psyched is your tool to get more of what you want in your life and less of what you don't.
If you've ever been in a relationship, there's about a 100% chance that you and your partner had certain differences. One of those differences just may have been how you and your partner handled money. Within that difference, it is likely that one of you was a bit spendy and the other was, shall we say, thriftier. This would be all fine and dandy, except often it's not. Money can be one of the biggest sources of arguments for couples. And money is funny. It can be a more charged topic and even more taboo than sex. What to do? Fear not, help is on the way. Dr. Rick Scott is an associate professor of marketing at the University of Michigan's Ross School of Business. He is the author of the well-researched and hilariously titled Tightwads and Spendthrifts, Navigating the Money Minefield in Real Relationships. I loved this book, and I'm hardly alone. Booklist said it's a must-read for anyone looking to unravel the mysteries of money and love. I couldn't agree more. So listen in as Scott and I talk about how to navigate money in our relationships. Dr. Scott Rick, a hearty welcome to Super Psyched.
Adam, thank you so much for having me.
So it's so hilarious when I was told about you and would I like to, I'm laughing because would I like to interview you? It was kind of like, would you like to have a chocolate sundae with endless toppings? Yes, is the answer. Yes, I would like that. So I'm so glad to be interviewing you about your book.
I love the comparison. Thank you.
I would have gone full Augustus Gloop on that. I can tell you that. My man, you are a decision scientist, which is sort of the most interesting background. Before we even get into your book, I'm going to share something, and that is simply this. I used to do video biographies, and I asked my friend's father, who I was interviewing. He was in his 90s, a World War II vet, a very wise man. I said, what makes the difference between a good life and a bad life? And he didn't even flinch. He just said, judgment. Everything comes down to that. And before we get into tightwads and spendthrifts, let's talk about some of the aspects of decision science that people might benefit from knowing, just things that might be invisible to them, whether it might be a bias or something in the literature that you encountered that you thought was extremely useful.
Yeah. The whole work on understanding your future self and knowing that we often say, I'll do something tomorrow. I'll start my diet tomorrow. Like there is no tomorrow. Tomorrow always becomes today. And so that is very prominent in my mind, that knowing how I'll stumble if left to my own devices. And so I have to pre-commit to things. And sometimes you can use budgets to pre-commit to spending more or less. It doesn't always have to be spending less. So it's all about just really knowing yourself and adjusting kind of the choice architecture around you to help that future version of yourself. Knowing your flaws is big.
So inculcating a really strong cable between my now self and my future self and really zeroing in while simultaneously knowing my shortcomings, my flaws, not having fantastical ideas like, you know what I'm going to be able to do next week? I will be slam dunking just like LeBron. That's not happening. But maybe something more reasonable, like I will lose this much weight or I will save this much money or, yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. You can use it to restrict yourself a little more or restrict yourself a little less. Like some people need to pre-commit to, I know I have a hard time loosening up, but maybe I can loosen up later if I take the steps. Yeah.
My virtuous future self will be totally down with this.
Yeah.
I'll just put it in my future self's inbox and future me will be fine dealing with this pile of crap. And future me is not fine with dealing with this pile of crap, as it turns out.
Yeah. Understanding like, oh, that future me will have the same mindset I have right now, but hopefully my now self can, rearrange the environment in a way that makes it easier for that person.
One of the things I've learned as a parent is that the two words yes and now are maybe the two most important words for our children to learn, because children whose prefrontal cortical functioning is not quite where it would be at 25 have a very different idea of later will be okay. I'll be fine doing it later. And lo and behold, they learn that later is not okay. And I try to instill an urgency of yes and now. So I love what you're saying. I think that it's actually applies to all ages. I know Mel Robbins famously talks about the 5-second rule, as she describes it, which I think is great. And she says, I give myself 5 seconds to do it. Otherwise, complacency sets in.
It's so true. And knowing this, it helps. It really does. There are still some emails that from 3 weeks ago that I haven't gotten to, but it's less than it would have been if I didn't realize this.
Yeah. And actually, to compensate for my own ADHD, one of the park courses I put my brain through for exercise was inculcating this sense of urgency. So I vibe with what you're saying. It makes a lot of sense. I can tell you, even with the high achievers, procrastination is like kryptonite. So right on. So let's get into money.
Yeah.
Money is freaking weird, man. It's like we will share very intimate details with our friends about our sex lives, about various very personal things. But my goodness, what did you get on your W-2 or 1099? Like sharing that information. Tell me about your bank accounts. Nobody wants to share that. And what, in your opinion, makes money so verboten?
A lot of it is just what we see growing up, and we see people not talking about it. And so there's some status quo bias. This is the way things are. Yeah. And there's so many mysteries. Like, how did our neighbors afford that fabulous house? Was it income? Was it inheritance? Was it theft? Was it, who knows? Lottery winnings? So yeah, there's a lot of mysteries out there. And we make assumptions about how others must be going about their finances. People see it as a measure of their own worth. Income is a measure of your own worth, which is really not a great way to think about it. But people do, and thus it can be quite uncomfortable to spit that out. It's like asking someone, "Oh, how much do you weigh?" Like, hold on here.
Down, boy.
Yeah, easy. Let's just talk about the weather.
Let's keep it safe.
Keep it safe. But no, it's just so sensitive, and people are worried about saying the wrong thing or revealing something in a weird way. But yeah, as you say, it's weird.
You know, I'm thinking about social comparison. And one of the things I learned from Conan O'Brien, who's a Bostonian and kind of an Irish adjacent person, is that a very common phrase uttered in both locations, whether it's Boston or Ireland, is must be nice. And it's like you see somebody roll up in their new car that dwarfs the value and we feel diminished.
We do. Sometimes, though, you can comfort yourself saying, well, perhaps this was a foolish purchase on their part. And
and I would even advocate for really doubling down in those moments if you can, to hit Control-Alt-Delete and say, I appreciate what I have. You know, what we appreciate appreciates. I know it sounds corny, but it's really true. Like, and never more is it more important to just, like, I've got a lovely Hyundai SUV, which is not the belle of the ball in my neighborhood. And I love my car. And I love the tires I put on. And I always tell my kids, I love these tires. It's become like a family joke. And I know that on my block, this is not the eye candy car. There are, 3 dozen that come before it. But I try to double down. I don't know. What do you think about that as a kind of a cognitive intervention?
That's good. And I'm a spendthrift, and I have a 2011 Subaru Forester, and we call it the rust bucket, and it's fine, but I like spending on other things. I mean, the car runs, and who needs to show off? I'd be embarrassed if I was driving around in something fancy, and like people might think, oh, he needs the car to make a name for himself or seem fancy. Like I'd be so embarrassed to drive something fancy.
And yet you will have no compunctions as a spendthrift. And by the way, we should talk about what a spendthrift means, about buying really, really fancy shoes. Or you talked about the handbag that you bought Julie, your wife, that she did not love. But what is a spendthrift and what is a tightwad according to your taxonomy?
Yeah. So from my perspective, the tightwads are people who often look good on paper, financially speaking. You might look at their savings account and think, oh, they're not too anxious about money. But a lot of tightwads they know they should buy certain things. They just can't bring themselves to. They're really anxious about going broke and what else the money could be used for. So they don't get the gifts that would make their partners happy or their kids happy. They're not going on the right vacations. They're not replacing their beat up shoes, even though it would be so easy to do so, seemingly. So there's some regret there. They're kind of underspending, so to speak. Whereas the spendthrifts, so the tightwads are driving around with the emergency brake on. The spendthrifts are driving around with the brake lines cut. We don't have enough distress, and we're very present minded. We're not so much future oriented. We're more present minded. And so we end up buying some things that later we're like, oh, okay, I probably didn't need that.
It looked like a good idea at the time.
Yeah. And we're hopeful, like we might buy gym membership to spark exercise, or a coffee mug to prompt us to make coffee instead of buying it at work. Like there's some hopeful purchases there. So we're buying for potential needs. Whereas tightwads are not even buying to meet known real needs. So it's a very different orientation.
And it sounds like either one on overdrive has caustic side effects.
Yes. There's regret that comes with both. And certainly tightwads still look better on paper. It's much safer to be a tightwad financially, but there's still some second guessing and wishing you had behaved differently with both.
That's really funny. And you tell stories, including about a woman who was so sad that she didn't support her husband in his steak habit at his funeral. And lo and behold, unbeknownst to her and his friends knew that he was getting steak many days. But one of the things you talk about is how to talk about money, which if in relationships and in couples, sex, money, and kids are the big ticket items for fighting, what would be some of your tips, especially if it's spendthrift married to a tightwad?
Yeah. So you often hear about like, oh, financial transparency is essential and good. And I actually have complicated feelings about transparency. I think there are things that we should be totally transparent about. Like it should be clear how much income is that we have access to, and that's good. I like knowing what we're up to at a high level. But I think there should also be some discretion and privacy available. So I might know what you spend per week or per month, but the line by line details, I'm not sure I need to know that.
Right.
Because I might see that you have some hobby or passion or interest that I just don't understand or have context for. And everything in there might seem so overpriced to me. My wife is a needle pointer. If I had to guess the cost of like the thread or floss or whatever it is they call it, it would have been much lower than it actually is. But she's not endangering the household with her needle pointing, and it's a real passion of hers. So she doesn't need me looking at invoices. So you need some trust, and each person needs to pursue their own individual passions without someone looking over their shoulder. That's especially important when you have a tightwad and spendthrift in the same relationship.
Got it. And let's just geek out for a second.
Yeah.
Origin story, the backstory of a tightwad, the origin story of a spendthrift. You talked about perhaps biological bases and how they might not play a part, or environmental and how they might not play a part, or they might. And I'm just wondering, like, what's the backstory on how you became a spendthrift, and maybe by comparison, how your wife may have gone the other way? And what is your sense of, and I'm guessing it would probably relate to all of us in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. No, I think there are different routes to these orientations. I think there are some biological components. If you're someone who's very likely to ruminate and you're mathematical by nature, that kind of lends itself to tightwadism. But for me, I grew up in Houston. My grandparents were in town. They lived there with all their grandkids, seemingly a nice setup. They got bored of us and moved to Vegas. And that was sad, but at least we got to go visit them. And yeah, we would go for weeks at a time, and I would just be in casinos, sometimes with them, sometimes just on my own. And yeah, I got exposed to people pursuing happiness via money every day, all day. And I think it definitely loosened me up. Like it made me less anxious about spending, shelling out cash all day long. It's not necessarily something I'd want to replicate with my kids, but, and, I would definitely notice when coming back to Houston, like, oh, other families, they don't operate like this. And they had much more than us, but they were much more conservative with their spending. So I was like, this is interesting. So that left a mark on me. That kind of made me comfortable with spending, not too much anxiety about it. And then Julie, I would say her family was very frugal and just in they weren't overburdened with a lot of material desires. And maybe there was some Catholic guilt in their family about spending too much. And I think that can lend itself to some tightwadism also. But yeah, there's different ways to become a tightwad. Like some people are just born with that orientation. Some people go through financial struggles and develop like a protective shell to make sure they don't go broke. But the problem is sometimes later in life, things get better and you do start making some money and you would hope you can loosen up. But some people, if they develop this tendency in their earlier years, they just can't shake it when the money is good. So you have a lot of like wealthy tightwads who just feel like they're just always on the edge of going broke.
It's so scary, this survival instinct. And I think about people who survived the Great Depression and how poor they felt, even when they had massive bank accounts. And you talk about a character in Love in the Time of Cholera, who was this rich man who believed himself to be poor and died that way. And how there is joy left on the table, for lack of a better term. Does that seem right?
That's right. Someone called him rich. He said, I'm not rich. I'm a poor man with money. And so that is the mindset of a lot of tightwads, that I might have money at the moment, but it could go away. And it's a bunker mentality. And so, yeah, there is a lot of regret there, joy left on the table. Like, I wish I would have done that thing with the kids and now they're grown up and out of the house. And that's that. So yeah, as a spendthrift, that's what we are worried about. Not so much going broke later, but like being older person filled with regret about all these missed opportunities.
And you talk about it seems like a really common theme of the husband who takes his wife to a cheaper restaurant and feels regret afterwards because she's a foodie and it would have given her so much joy. And you talk about the notion of if $50 comes from Amazon versus $50, which is a big sacrifice to you, the gift is measurably different. And let's talk about perception for a second. You talk about even the notion that two $50 bills feels like more than 100. And I was thinking to myself, yeah, and $199.99 is just a cent away from 200. And yet psychologically, it feels different.
Very different.
Let's talk about the weird stuff that our brain does as it's trying to, even if I am a numbers person. And yet, for whatever reason, it's like, oh, it's only $199.99, honey. It's not 200. It's less. What is going on with our dumb minds as it relates to money and these cognitive biases?
I know. We're not calculators and we can't fully think through things. What's expensive? Who knows? What's too much to pay for something? We don't know. And so we use kind of heuristics and shortcuts. And yeah, this is definitely a favorite topic with me and my kids, left digit bias, that $199 versus 200. I tell them, if you want to sell it for 200, you sacrifice the dollar, sell it for $199. It'll feel closer to 100 than closer to 200 because you read left to right and you anchor on kind of the leftmost digits and you forget about the rest. So was it 99? Was it 0? Who knows?
I felt that my body is just saying that, but keep going.
Yes. We're going to see that with the election coming up. Like, are you in your 80s or in your 70s? Like, it's a very big difference, 79 versus 80. Like, left digit bias just governs everything. But there aren't a lot of right answers. Like, how much should we be paying for something? So if I give you some comparison to make, well, now all of a sudden you're anchored on that number that I've presented to you. And so now you stick close to that number. And if you want to sell a house for $350, you don't price it at $350, you price it at $347, $250 to make sure you suggest to people, oh, I've done my homework. I've looked at the comps. This is a carefully generated number, not some wish I'm throwing out there. And so people are making all kinds of inferences and just a lot of imperfect math.
Absolutely brilliant. The $347, $250. It's like, oh yes, that's unassailable. I mean, it had been $350. I'd say, oh yeah, this guy is just trying to get a particular number.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. So by sacrificing a little, you can get a lot.
Yes. Our school district in town, they recently asked for a $1 billion bond to improve these aging schools. And I voted yes, of course they need it, but my God, I wish it wasn't like this big, round, gigantic number. Like, can we do 997 million, in something more specific? It makes it sound like we're much more careful about this. And it's less than $1 billion.
Right. I'm wondering, someone in my life is a spendthrift, and yet this person will only buy gasoline from Costco, where he must wait in line for a very long period of time, which has always struck me as penny wise, pound foolish. And it seems like he's contextually a spendthrift in certain areas and a tightwad in others. And I'm wondering, on the spectrum, is it contextual that we can be a spendthrift in some place and a tightwad in others?
Yeah, a lot of people have that experience. One piece of context is how obvious are price comparisons. And with gas, if you're paying more than some other place, like the price is just on this gigantic sign. And so that can be very painful for people. And so you see a lot of people willing to burn their time to save a little bit on gas because the price comparisons are so obvious. But yeah, there are categories, like a lot of tightwads will be very conservative for themselves. But if it's for someone else, maybe they'll loosen up a little bit. Maybe they have to. It's what the bride and groom registered for, and I have no choice, and I don't want to be a jerk and get them something off registry. Yeah, but the more kind of personal and optional it feels, this is where tightwads are at their most tightwaddy. But if it's for someone else, if it feels like an investment or a gift maybe for someone, then they can loosen up a little bit.
That's absolutely fascinating. I'm thinking, by the way, the aforementioned, the idea of being a rich man who feels like a poor person, you came up with a great term. You called it money dysmorphia. And I think that's a great term to consider. What would be your top tips to both the spendthrift and to the tightwad to be just a little, perhaps less rueful on the other side, less regretful? What would be some of your go-to pieces of advice?
Yeah. So for the tightwad, the money dysmorphia, outside perspectives are good. That can be a financial planner or just like an informed third party to tell you like, oh, you can actually afford to spend a little more. Maybe you don't trust your spouse when they say we can afford it, but sometimes the third party can help loosen things up. And I would say, know your future self, pre-commit, set aside a budget for more optional or fun purchases. And then the money is there when you encounter these opportunities. So you don't have to indulge today, but you can set up your future self to have some fun later. For the spendthrift, it's about making it very visible, the money leaving your possession. So when I was in grad school, I was broke. I had to train myself to be a tightwad, at least for a few years. And so it was all about putting up psychological speed bumps. I would spend with cash as much as possible. I would feel pain at the ATM when taking it out, and then pain again when paying at the store. So all these points I was creating distress to slow me down. And when I had to pay with the card, I would pay with debit, get the receipt, go home, enter the purchase into Excel. Even though I knew that purchase was already on my bank statement automatically, I wanted to feel the money leaving. So that is a deterrent. If I spend this, I'm going to have to go home and confront it on my Excel sheet. I'm going to have to go face to face with this reality. So it's about putting up these moments to reconsider and just making it harder to spend, because goodness knows retailers are not looking to help the spendthrifts. No. So you are on your own to put up your own speed bumps.
Unlike a fiduciary financial planner whose job it is to really safeguard your money, the retailers have a conflict of interest with you. They want to take your money. It's their job. So how about for the spendthrift? What would be your top? By the way, that's great. I mean, it's almost like photographing your food or writing down all your purchases. It causes you to have a real feeling of what you're doing. And I just can't help but quote a quote that really meant a lot to me. Was from Maya Angelou. People will forget what you said or did, but they'll remember how they felt when they were with you. And that palpable feeling, I mean, I'm geeking out, neurophysiologically is so close to our limbic system, holds our memories for our survival. This idea of writing down the gas spend causes you to feel it more. I guess in a way also that spending with cash feels different than spending with a credit card.
You get the same card back. There's no tangible feedback about what you've just spent. And you can quiz people, at Starbucks, how much did you just spend? They have no idea if they're paying with a card or an app, or if they pay with cash, they can tell you. But, just moments later, it's gone. So Amazon, they're artists at this. Like they have these Amazon Go stores where you just collect your items and walk out. There's no checkout. It's just They say, oh, we have AI monitoring you. And it turns out it's actually low paid workers like watching you on camera and totaling up what you take
Oh, it's
out.
actually not checking.
No.
Oh, I thought it was some type of.
It just came out that it was just like horrible labor conditions, people like watching you on camera and totaling the stuff. But, there's no pain. And they email you the receipt 10 minutes later once someone punches in your purchases, but it's just totally invisible. And so one-click purchasing, you go to Disney, you pay with you tap your little band on your wristband. So yeah, as a spendthrift, you have to work against all that. Make it obvious what's leaving your possession.
That's amazing. And how about for the tightwad?
For the tightwad, it's just the other way. Can you bundle things? Can you take the all-in vacation package where you don't have to pay for each meal, or so you can enjoy it unburdened by knowing what everything costs? Or can you outsource it to your spouse and they book the vacation and you don't ask them how much it costs? Or if you do ask them, they're nice enough to give you like a white lie about how much it costs.
Because you mentioned the importance of a spendthrift buying the experiences and the tightwad buying material. Yeah. So it sounds like in this context, it would be better to allow the tightwad to enjoy the vacation by saying it costs. That is real. That is brand spanking new. I would think that would have negative repercussions.
Yeah. There has to be kind of this understanding that you have this issue and you trust me to be the organizer of experiences and we're going to have a great time. And don't worry about the details. Just trust that I'm not going to bankrupt us. And the details are available upon request. And if you do make the request, just know that you'll get a wink and a nod. It was good. It was good price. It was on sale.
For the purpose of your joy, I'm withholding this, and we understand that. So it sounds like the preamble to this is there has to be a discussion ahead of time. Hey, I know how you're wired. I know how I'm wired. I'm buying the experience, and you will not have to suffer the toxicity of knowing the total cost.
I mean, to me, that's the nice thing to do. Like, we don't leave price tags on gifts.
No.
We're hiding that. So there's a percentage that's probably acceptable. I wouldn't say like, oh yeah, it was free or anything too extreme, but yeah, you can always frame how you describe costs. Maybe you leave out the tax.
I see what you're saying. And it's interesting to hear you talk, because one of the things I'm really getting from our conversation and having read your book twice is that the answer, like most things in life, is inconvenient. It's somewhere between these two poles. And it depends on the context. It depends on a whole host of factors, which is the better way to go. Contextually, in graduate school, you had to be a tightwad. You couldn't buy those fun yellow shoes or the Pearl Jam bootlegs, which you talk about in the book, and you'll have to read the book to understand about the Pearl Jam bootlegs, but that was hilarious and caused me to remember. Wow, so good. Is there anything I should have asked but haven't yet asked?
Well, I would just note that, as you know, the book talks about like gift giving, and there's a chapter on gift giving, which I think is my response to a lot of well-meaning but misguided advice about how to give gifts. And I think giving gifts is so important in relationships. And I am not a fan of the approach of, just ask them what they want and get that for them. Because I guess it's a way to prevent disasters.
Mm-hmm.
I guess my father-in-law one time had a iron thrown at him. That was like a gift he got from my mother-in-law. And that's no gift.
Iron thrown?
Yeah, like, no, I don't want this. This is not a gift.
Yeah. Oh, I follow you. Yeah. Here's a diet book for your birthday.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I don't want that.
No. It's funny. Like Fitbits, they say, it's a great gift for the holidays. I'm like, easy there. I don't know if that's a good gift.
Or here's pants that you'll be able to wear when you lose the weight.
Yes.
Terrible gift.
Terrible gift. But no, I think giving a good gift really requires kind of, exploring your partner's inner psychological world. What are they interested in? What are they curious about, excited for? And giving a gift that shows like, I understand you. I see you. I appreciate you. And that's important because we don't often say it enough verbally. You don't always find the right time, or you're talking about administrative household tasks, like who's picking the kids up from practice. And you can get kind of lost in that. So the gift is really essential.
And I would almost infer, and please disabuse me if I'm incorrect about this, that perhaps if it's financially feasible, that you should go the extra mile if you're not harming yourself. And it seems like it's a combination of generosity and showing them that you know them. There's something about being seen.
Yes.
And when you miss the mark there, and it's like a little bit of a chintzy gift, it really can hurt. It's like, wow, really? I noticed that I was opening gifts at a friend of mine's house, and he was noting that many of the people with tremendous means gave really cheap gifts or cheap monetary gifts, and people who came from more modest means gave a lot, and not just relative to their earning, but a lot, period. And that is, wow, it's so interesting and paradoxical how that can work. And what I was getting from my friend was like, there were feels that he experienced as a result of that exchange.
And yeah, that is one thing to keep in mind, that the gift is not this object that lives in isolation. It's kind of about the giver. And so you judge it in that context. And so, for example, if a spendthrift just spends a lot of money on some gift, that's fine, but they spend a lot of money on everything. And
Right.
so it's, I don't know, is that special? Hopefully it's thoughtful, but it can go wrong if you're just throwing money at the situation, which I've been known to do every now and then. But so if I'm a spendthrift, you want a gift to be kind of hard to obtain or find, or I got to put in the work. I got to call some bookstores to find the first edition of some book, or like plan a weekend or do something effortful. I can't just spend money to show that I love you. I do that on everything.
For sure. And I love that. I always laugh when I hear about like, well, I would have liked to have received this gift, so I gave it to them. It's kind of like that golden rule going badly, like do unto others as you'd want done unto you. When the platinum rule needs to be in effect, do unto others as they want done.
Yeah.
So, so good. My man, so much fun talking with you. I'm going to ask you my final miracle question.
Sure.
And it goes like this. Scott Rick, if you had the magical powers to confer upon all humanity one insight or skill that would dramatically improve the lives of the individual and perhaps even society at large, since we're all connected, what would that insight or skill be? And how do you imagine it would affect the individual as well as perhaps society at large?
This is a very spendthrift thing to say, but the book was a reminder of the fragility of life and the unpredictability of it. And I understand a lot of the advice is aimed at kind of setting aside money, being responsible, and making sure your future self is taken care of financially. I get that. But certainly thinking about all this stuff has made me err more on the side of like seizing the day and making sure I don't save it all to the end, so to speak, all the fun. So I know not everyone is in a position to do this, of course, but if you are, I say be sure to live a little while you're young, and certainly if you have kids while they're young. And yeah.
You know, as you're talking, I'm thinking about something that one of my favorite comedians, Pete Holmes, talks about. He says, the concert is happening. I'm paraphrasing poorly. And it's not defined by the final note. It's not like you slide into home and he who has the most toys when he dies wins. I would say it's the joy that you get from, you know, of course, living mindfully and within your means. But at the same time, one of the other really amazing studies shows that an existential regret that we have is love left on the table. And that could come from not being chintzy with the gift. And like maybe go the extra mile, show them you know them, show them you love them in a way that is meaningful to them. And of course, within your budget, but simultaneously, perhaps on the generous side is what I'm getting. Like, let's live while we're alive.
Yeah, I love it. I'm a big Pete Holmes fan also.
Oh, right on. He's the best.
Yeah.
Scott, this has been so great. So grateful to Yael for introducing us. Loved your book. I highly recommend people get Tightwads and Spendthrifts. It's a delightful read. The words fly off the page. It's informative. It's a really important book that can, I think, help individuals as well as couples and families by extension. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This was a real joy, Adam. Thank you.
This is Dr. Adam Dorsey thanking you for listening to Super Psyched. If you know anyone who might like it or who might benefit from listening, share it. And if you like the episode, please hit subscribe.